Have you ever walked down a dark hallway and suddenly felt like something was there? Your heart races, your muscles freeze, and for a split second you could swear you saw something move out of the corner of your eye. This sensation has an explanation, and it's far older and stranger than you might think. Almost everyone has felt this at some point, yet we rarely stop to ask why. Is it just a cultural side effect, horror movies, and ghost stories? Or is there something much deeper hidden in our evolutionary past? By the end of this video, you'll understand how the fear of darkness might be a 300,000-year-old survival system, still running inside your brain. Let's start with what's actually happening in your body. When light fades, your vision loses precision, and your brain becomes far more dependent on sound, memory, and prediction than on real information. In that vacuum, a region called the amygdala, responsible for detecting threats, becomes hyperactive. It starts filling in the empty spaces with possible dangers, even without any real evidence that something is there. One of the most fascinating theories ties this behavior directly to our evolutionary history, to a time when our ancestors lived on the African savanna, surrounded by nocturnal predators that could see far better in the dark than they could. Picture the scene: no artificial light, no safe walls, just the sounds of the savanna around you and the certainty that lions, hyenas, and other hunters move best at night. In that scenario, the fear of darkness wasn't irrational, it was an advantage. Those who felt more fear stayed more alert, hid, grouped together, and survived. Those who didn't feel enough fear often didn't live long enough to pass their genes on. So how do we know this theory holds up? Studies with young children from different cultures and with no prior exposure to horror movies show very similar spikes in anxiety as soon as the lights go out, suggesting this fear isn't learned. It comes factory installed. Neuroscientists also point to the sensory side of the story. In the dark, the brain receives less visual data, but it still needs to respond quickly to the environment. To compensate, it starts using prediction instead of perception, essentially guessing what might be there based on fear and past experience. That's why the shadow of a coat hanging on a door can, for a moment, look exactly like the silhouette of a person standing in the room. This experience varies a lot from person to person. Some feel a mild discomfort, others go into full panic just from hearing a strange noise at night. Stress, anxiety, and past experiences all directly influence the intensity of this response. And here's a question worth asking: if this fear was useful for so long, why hasn't it disappeared now that the real danger is gone? Because evolution doesn't move fast enough to keep up with the pace of civilization. We built houses, electric light, and safe cities in just a few thousand years. A blink of an eye compared to the 300,000 years it took to shape this alert system. Today, of course, the danger is almost never real. There are no predators lurking behind the bedroom door. And yet our bodies still insist on reacting as if there were, proof that evolution doesn't always clean up after itself. So how can you reduce this excessive fear of the dark? It largely comes down to how the brain handles uncertainty. Keeping a stable sleep routine, avoiding horror content before bed, using a dim nightlight, and practicing breathing techniques all help the nervous system associate darkness with safety instead of constant threat. Now imagine, for a moment, if we still lived in that ancestral reality, sleeping out in the open, hearing every snapping branch as a possible warning between life and death. That fear of darkness could have quite literally been the difference between surviving until dawn or not. But let's go even deeper, because this isn't the only strange way your brain reacts to darkness. Your nervous system is constantly balancing vigilance and rest, even when you think you're relaxed. Take pareidolia, for example. The brain's tendency to see faces or shapes where none exist, even stronger at night, when the lack of visual contrast gives your imagination full freedom to fill in the blanks. The fear of darkness can also be triggered by external factors, like a sudden noise or an abrupt change in temperature, causing the brain to interpret a small stimulus as an imminent threat. On a more technical level, scientists link this response to the sympathetic nervous system, the same system responsible for the fight or flight response. During the day, this system stays more regulated, but at night, with less sensory information available, it slips into a heightened state of alert much more easily, ready to release adrenaline at the slightest sign of danger. Here's an interesting statistic. Research suggests that more than 90% of people report some level of discomfort or anxiety in complete darkness, even in environments they rationally know to be safe. As exaggerated as it may seem, this isn't a sign of weakness. It's simply a nervous system working exactly as it was designed to. That said, if this fear becomes paralyzing or interferes with daily life, it's worth seeking professional guidance. Going back to the evolutionary picture, Imagine our ancestors gathered around a fire. That very same fire, which not by coincidence, became a universal symbol of safety in nearly every human culture. Any sound outside the normal pattern, even during light sleep, could mean a predator silently approaching. What's especially interesting is that this alert fires before you even consciously process what you heard. The body reacts first, the mind rationalizes afterward. Some researchers believe this mechanism helped shape entire neural circuits dedicated to rapid pattern and motion detection, directly contributing to the development of our sensory alert system. Beyond humans, nearly all mammals that evolved as prey show similar reactions in the absence of light, suggesting this trait is widely shared among species vulnerable to nocturnal predators. It's a small but powerful example of how efficient evolution is at preserving what works. If you think about it, there's even a connection between this primal fear and the so-called startle reflex, that automatic bodily reaction to a sudden loud noise, still tested today in neuroscience studies. If you want to experience this for yourself, just sit in a completely dark room for a few minutes and pay attention to how your mind starts filling in the gaps. With a little attention, you'll notice that subtle state of alert emerging, even knowing you're safe. Just don't overdo it. Repeatedly forcing this fear can reinforce anxiety patterns instead of reducing them. Here's a fascinating historical detail. Ancient cultures, from the Greeks to indigenous peoples across different continents, associated darkness with spirits, deities, or supernatural forces, creating entire rituals and myths just to explain what the eye couldn't see. Today, with modern neuroimaging, we can actually observe what happens behind this sense of invisible danger. An intense exchange of signals between the amygdala, the visual cortex, and the brainstem. A true orchestra of alertness playing in the shadows, so the next time you feel that shiver as you step into a dark room, remember, it's not silliness, and it's not an overactive imagination. It's your brain running a survival program written 300,000 years ago, still active, still protecting you, even though the danger it was built for disappeared long ago. If you found this fascinating, stick around for more strange and surprising stories about the human mind and where it really came from.